Hey, greetings everyone. It is GleeCon, and I am back here again, bringing you another episode more of Warcraft. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. On the last episode, we ran some wetlands, but we also kind of started leveling up Millie as she was level 30 and traveled her around, did a couple little breadcrumbs to some other areas out of wetlands. So we still have probably one episode left of wetlands. We've also been reading through War of the Scaleborn, and we're near the end here. We're in the final climactic battle between the Aspects and the Primals. They did the big war on the field where all 5 flights went against the remaining forces of the Primalists, and they won, and now they're bringing it inside Harrow's Deep to try to have the final battle against Iridikron. So stay a while and listen as we read today, Chapter 27 on War of the Scaleborn. The stones of Harrow's Deep never stopped moving. As Neltharion ventured inside, he sensed hundreds of tunnels in constant motion, shifting, rumbling, quaking, reaching into the deepest depths of the planet's crust. Iridikron would be in hiding in that abyss, lying in wait for Neltharion and the other Aspects. The mountain growled as the Earth Warder stepped into the keep. Its stones felt outright hostile, unwilling to yield their secrets nor their master's location. The Dragon Queen followed close behind on Neltharion's tail. Alexstrasza paused at his right wing, her gaze roving over the cavern's empty interior. Orange light from the battlefield greased the cavern's maw, highlighting the sharp stalactites inside. Shadows draped most of the interior, hiding its depths from sight. "Are you sure you must go with me?" Neltharion asked her, softly enough so the others wouldn't hear. "The battle is won. All that remains is to capture Iridikron." She turned her golden gaze on him. "We are strongest when we work together," she said as the other Aspects joined them. "I will not abandon you at the end." "Nor will I," Malygos said, wrinkling his snout at the cavern's strong, musky odor. "I won't have you waste the life I just spent so much to save, crashing into enemy lines. Really, Neltharion?" "It worked," Neltharion grumbled. "Only with the Blue's support," Malygos replied with a flick of his tail. "Though I admit I had half a mind not to save you from your own heroics." But then who would lead you into the depths of Harrow's Deep?" Neltharion asked, selecting a hunk of stone from the ground and superheating it with a forge flame. Malygos snorted. "Preferably someone without a death wish." Neltharion grinned and levitated the burning stone above his horns, illuminating everything around him in a 3-wingspan radius. The other Aspects did likewise. Alexstrasza and Malygos sparked fire, Ysera summoned a pair of lively green wisps, and ribbons of bright golden sand danced around Nosdormu. Each Aspect had brought their 10 best dragons, though Malygos had an extra 10 portal keepers, and Neltharion had an entire company of scalesmiths. Once the Aspects had taken the valley, the Earth Warder had commanded Kelsey and her crew from the Obsidian Citadel. Had summoned Kelsey. The Black Dragons would reinforce the tunnels with resonant elementium rods, map the Aspects' progress through the keep, and help Neltharion triangulate the stone scale's position. Agnion and his shadow scales had gone on ahead, acting as both scouts and the vanguard. Alexstrasza had also tasked them with finding and extricating the 31 missing dragons if they could. The other dragons followed the Aspects into the cavern, summoning light sources and exchanging nervous glances. They jumped every time the earth shuddered under their feet. Only the Black Dragonflight appeared at ease, carrying in supplies, constructing makeshift forges, and sending scouting parties. Garion and a combined force of Iron Scales and the Earthen Bulwark would stay behind to defend the Scalesmith's camp, as Lavarian had fallen in battle. Neltharion knew he would feel the flight commander's loss later. For now, he had to focus on keeping 100 dragons alive while they searched for Iridikron. Neltharion turned to address the assembly. "Before we begin, does everyone have a portal stone from the Blue Dragonflight?" The assembled dragons nodded. "Good," he said. "If you find yourself trapped in the keep, that may be your only means for escape." "I hope you have no need of them," Malygos said, "but if you do, the stone will return you to our camps in the south. Each stone has but a single charge. It would be wise not to forget that." It's like a hearthstone. Alexstrasza stepped forward, suffusing the assembly with soft, comforting ruby light. "You each have your orders. Let us form ranks and begin our descent. Be brave. Tonight shall be the last night that Harrow's Deep quakes." Neltharion and the Black Dragons took point, leading the company into the lightless depths. As they descended, the Earth Warder paid careful attention to the warrens below. With each temblor, the rocky strata in Harrow's Deep shifted up or down. Some layers appeared to turn on axis, though Neltharion wasn't sure how the stone scaled had achieved such a feat. The tunnels moved in set patterns, sometimes connecting to spacious caverns and passageways, and other times leading to dead ends. The timing and seismic strength of the quakes appeared to be unpredictable, and the largest sections of rock only moved when a massive vibration tore through the mountain. Their path twisted and turned, heading deeper until it opened into a gigantic barbed cavern.
"This place is incredible,"
Kelsia said to Neltharion, craning her neck to take in the sights. Large phosphorescent green crystal formations burst from the walls, emitting weak light. Bulbous stone columns stretched from ceiling to floor, each one as thick as Neltharion's forearm. The Earth Warder sensed several paths and tunnels branching from this singular cavern. The realization made him wary. The scalesmiths spread 3 points across the ground, sinking their claws into stone to measure the impact and location of the next quake. Mapmakers compared notes, spreading out a parchment to sketch the winding path their company had taken.
"Once the stone scaled is safely ensconced in the Vault of the Incarnates, I shall want to return and study this place," Calcia continued with a bob of her head. "We might be able to improve upon his methods for our own purposes." "It's quite rudimentary in its execution," Neltharion replied, sweeping his gaze across the cavern, alert for dangers. He gestured to 2 nearby iron scales, commanding them to check the perimeter without a word. "But I agree. Iridikron must have spent centuries designing this keep. He will no more drop it on our heads than we will allow him to fly free." "I should hope not," Calcia said, rummaging through the tool bag she wore strapped to her chest. "It would be a shame to lose such a marvel."
The Earth Warder chuckled, charmed by her irrepressible curiosity. They stood in one of the most dangerous locales in Azeroth, and all the Scalesmith wanted to know was how it worked.
"Let us hope it still stands after our confrontation with the stone scale, then," he said.
A small quake shivered through the cavern. The dragons behind them shifted when dirt and grit drummed on their scales. Alexstrasza flicked some pebbles off her shoulder, and Nosdormu shook his head from side to side, sending sand flying.
"We wait for the next one," Calcia called to the scalesmiths. "A larger quake will tell us more."
Neltharion caught the scent of singed hair and stinking flesh. He flared his nostrils and turned his head, but none of the shadows moved.
"No,"
he said, beckoning to the scalesmith with his talons.
"We take what information we have and continue on. I mislike this place."
Yeah, because of the Jaradine. The words were barely off his tongue before a Jaradine battle cry echoed through the cavern. 10 half-giants leapt from a crevasse in the ceiling, crashing into the ground in front of the Dragon Queen. Alexstrasza reared, slamming the back of her closed fist into the nearest Jaradine and sending him sprawling. As the Dragon Queen's guardians surrounded her, the cavern floor shivered. Craggy, boulder-shaped earth elementals struggled to their feet, their hollow torsos glittering like geodes.
"Stay back! The Dragon Queen is mine!"
a voice called as heavy footsteps thundered through the cavern. Neltharion whipped around, snarling, when he saw the Kalashi chieftainess Igira burst from the tunnels astride a massive mag mammoth. Flaming markings covered every inch of her chest and limbs, testaments to the dragons she had felled. Her bright white hair stood in sharp contrast with her cobalt skin. She hefted a massive blood-stained axe on one shoulder. Shouts echoed from other tunnels. Jaradine shadows danced along the walls, silhouetted by the flames from their mounts.
"Protect your queen!"
Neltharion shouted, sprinting for the Jaradine chieftainess as she rode past. The floor jolted, staggering the Earth Warder. Igira stormed past him. He dug his talons into the stone, hanging on as a strong quake rolled through the mountain. A crack tore through the floor between Neltharion and the rest of the company. Before he could regain his footing, his section of the cavern shook and rose almost to full wing length with a violent jerk. Alexstrasza's section dropped out of sight. With a shriek, Igira leapt off her mountain into the yawning chasm between the shifting strata of stone, axe brandished over her head. Her mag mammoth tripped and tumbled over the edge, screaming. The 2 massive stone plates shifted past each other, sealing Neltharion in silence and darkness.
"Alexstrasza!"
Neltharion said, leaping to his feet. He rushed to the plate, rearing up to place both forefeet on it, but the stone would not heed his commands.
"Alexstrasza!"
No one answered him. Someone drew a shaky breath. Neltharion turned. Calcia stood behind him, staring at the wall of stone, her lower jaw trembling. A scalesmith landed beside her, nudging her with an elbow and asking if she was all right. Calcia gritted her teeth and bobbed her head.
"I aspect, what are your orders?"
an iron scale asked, approaching Neltharion with a bow. He swept his gaze over the little party, taking quick stock of their numbers. 7 iron scales, 2 earthen bulwark, and 2 scalesmiths. It was enough to continue.
We press on, the Earth Warder said, striding toward one of the caverns. I do not doubt the stone scale pulled that little maneuver to separate us, but no matter. The Dragon Queen is a capable warrior, and we will travel faster with a lighter party. Come, let us see if we cannot find Iridikron's lair.
Alexstrasza snarled as the Jardine elder leapt over the heads of her personal guard. The half-giantess landed in a crouch, staring up at the Dragon Queen with eyes full of hate. Roars and shouts echoed through the cavern as Dragon clashed with Jardine.
I know you,
Alexstrasza said, eyeing the chieftainess.
Igira the Cruel.
Aye, Igira said with a grin. The half-giantess rose to her feet, running her tongue over her teeth.
You came with fewer dragons than I thought. A pity. My tribe was hoping for more sport.
You wish for sport, Alexstrasza said as more Jardine thundered into the cavern. She spread her wings and slammed her forefoot into the ground, setting her scales aflame with ruby light. She dropped her chin as she said, You have fought naught but drakes. The forces who defeated you at Scalecracker Keep were barely grown. They chased you from your ancestral lands. What hope do you have against an aspect? You are nothing more than a mite between my scales.
Ha! Die beneath a sky of stone, the half-giantess roared, brandishing her axe at the Dragon Queen.
The low light gleamed off the blade's wicked edge.
Unlikely,
Alexstrasza said, baring her teeth. Igira leapt at the Dragon Queen with an ear-shattering battle cry. Alexstrasza juked left, pressing her wings against her back. The chieftainess landed, pivoted on the ball of one foot, then swung her axe at Alexstrasza's head. The blade whistled as it sliced through the air beneath the aspect's snout. Before Igira could recover, Alexstrasza charged forward, slamming her head into the chieftainess's flank. Igira staggered back. Alexstrasza pounced, her 4 feet connecting with Igira's broad-muscled shoulders. They hit the ground with a grunt and slid several wing lengths. Alexstrasza's scales rasped against stone. Igira landed a blow in a tender spot on Alexstrasza's snout, sending bright light shooting across the red aspect's vision. The Dragon Queen snapped her head back in surprise. Before Alexstrasza could recover, Igira snapped a small knife between the red aspect's toes. With a pained shriek, Alexstrasza leapt backward. She gave her right forefoot a hard shake, flinging the knife away. Blood spattered over the stone floor. The elder got to her feet, grinning. Battles raged all around them. With a sweep of his tail, Malygos took the Magmammoths out from under 5 Jardine warriors. Ysera summoned great roots from the stone trapping the half-giants and their mounts, and Jardine screamed as Nosdormu blasted them with a breath of superheated sand. The aspect's escorts fanned out between them, protecting their flanks and backs. Igira's axe scraped on stone as she hefted it from the floor.
I have hunted more than just your drakes, Dragon Queen, she said with a scoff. I have felled many dragons from your flights. Now it is your turn. Soon I will have your head mounted above my tent.
A flash of vermilion scales swooped from the shadows overhead, falling upon the chieftainess. A young red slammed Igira into the ground with a snarl, pinning the Jardine between her toes.
Go, my queen, the young red said. We will hold the Jardine at bay.
We? The red aspect said, recognizing the young red.
Alexstrasza, what are you doing here?
Before Alexstrasza could answer, another half-giantess charged at her, swinging a massive club at the young red's head. With a growl, Alexstrasza caught the club in her teeth and yanked it from the half-giantess's grip. Stepping off Igira, the young red spun and slammed her barbed tail into the other half-giantess's flank, sending the Jardine sprawling. Igira scrambled to her feet. Before she could strike the young red, Alexstrasza lunged forward, slamming her armored shoulder into Igira's torso. The chieftainess stumbled back with a furious shriek. The Dragon Queen drew a deep breath and held it, allowing the air to feed the fires in her lungs, then released a torrent of crimson flame at the Jardine chieftainess. It wouldn't kill her, no, but it was enough to force her to retreat from Alexstrasza's rage.
Saragossa freed us from our chains in the keep, Alexstrasza said by way of explanation, speaking so fast that her tongue tripped over the words. More than 20 fly with us. Let us fight the Jardine, my aspect. We will not fail you.
You could never fail me, the red aspect said as Igira glowered at them.
Very well. I will leave my escort to fight at your side. Titans be with you.
And with you, the young red said, grinning as she turned back to the chieftainess. Spreading her wings, Alexstrasza launched herself into the air.
Aspects with me, she roared. We go to end the Stone-Scale's reign of terror.
Neltharion and his black dragons descended into Harrow's Deep's abyss, following the epicenters of the mountain quakes. The path twisted, the rocks shifted, the ground dropped out from under their feet, turning open tunnels into dead ends. A sideways shear of stone could unleash an army of earth elementals upon them. Volcanic vents opened in the floor, spewing magma. They crawled through constricting tunnels, dived off cliffs into the purest darkness, and found a giant earth elemental that snapped with Iridikron's own power. 2 iron scales sustained burn wounds from nearly being dragged into a lake of magma by lava worms. Neltharion sent them out via their portal stones. Calcia followed them soon after, her right wing crushed by a falling column of rock. Still, the Earth Warder pushed on. With every triangulation, the black dragons drew closer to the stone-scaled's lair. This deep in the planet's crust, the earthquakes felt richer, more resonant. No doubt the incarnate knew Neltharion drew close, for it seemed the entirety of the keep wanted nothing more than to kill them. Injuries claimed Neltharion's companions one by one, forcing the black aspect to send them back to safety. By the time Neltharion reached the bowels of Harrow's Deep, he walked alone, which was likely what the stone-scaled wanted. The quakes beckoned him forward, snagging him in the gut like a gravitational force. "You are alone now," the voice rose in the back of his mind, clearer here in the abyss. "All your friends are gone," said another. "You will not be able to win against the stone-scaled on your own," said the third. Neltharion scoffed, blowing a breath out of his nostrils. Had he not led his dragons into the depths? Was he not the last one standing, the one who would stride into Iridikron's lair and meet the incarnate talon to talon? An incarnate could not best an aspect, not even in the seat of his power. Alexstrasza had proven that much. The tunnel ended in a smear of amber light. Neltharion stepped into an enormous cavern, one that dwarfed every other chamber in Harrow's Deep. The floor had dropped into an unfathomable abyss, one dark enough to send a shudder through Neltharion's scales. Tall, unbroken pillars of gray basalt lined the walls. Clutches of giant topaz crystals burst from the ceiling. Elemental energy snapped along the crystal's angular tips. The cavern's beauty stole Neltharion's breath away. Iridikron stood on a large floating island, his back to Neltharion. Massive chunks of rock rotated around the platform at different speeds and orbits, generating the energy for the seismic waves that rocked the mountain.
"Never did I think another dragon would lay eyes upon this place,"
Iridikron said without turning. He lifted his head.
"I suppose it is only fitting that it be you."
Neltharion made no answer. He lowered his head, muscles tensing, expecting an attack. The stone-scaled wheeled to face the black aspect, his eyes gleaming with the same elemental energies that blazed in the cavern's crystals. He spread his wings wide, gesturing to the cavern around them.
"Tell me, Earth Warder, was it worth it to shackle yourself to the will of the Titans?" "Why would I not take advantage of the power the Keepers offered me?"
Neltharion said, looking down his snout at Iridikron.
"That is not what I asked," the Incarnate said. "I asked if their power was worth the weight of the oaths they forced upon you." "My oaths are no burden," Neltharion replied, stalking to the edge of the platform. "You, on the other hand, have been nothing but an encumbrance for me for the last 500 years. "Still you refuse to give me an answer," the stone-scaled said, cocking his head. "So I suppose the answer must be no."
With a roar, Neltharion leapt into the air, crossing the cavern in one great sweep of his wings. He landed on the central island, bounded once, and collided with Iridikron. Imbuing his talons with fire, Neltharion slashed at the Incarnate's throat, leaving shallow scores in his stony scales. Iridikron drove his head into Neltharion's chin, then slammed his shoulder into Neltharion's chest, knocking him back. Bright lights burst across the black aspect's vision. Neltharion staggered with a gasp, feeling as if the earth pulled at him more than it should.
"You cannot win,"
Iridikron said. The earth energies crackling along his spine blazed brighter.
"Not here, not alone." "The moment I stepped into this cavern, you had already lost," Neltharion said, charging at the Incarnate.
Iridikron punched a wing talon into the floor. A sharp fin of volcanic rock erupted. Neltharion smashed through it, sending stony shards flying in all directions. He feinted left, then slid right, driving his talons into the glowing core in Iridikron's chest. The Incarnate roared, stumbling to the edge of the platform. The whole of the mountain shook with his rage. Neltharion ignored it, launching himself at the Incarnate. He sank his teeth into Iridikron's wing, yanked it sideways, then jammed 2 talons into the joint. Snarling, Iridikron wrenched his wing from Neltharion's mouth, leaving his teeth bloody. The stone-scaled sent a shockwave through the floor to knock the black aspect back. The whole of the cavern shook again. The topaz crystals in the ceiling shattered, their fragments tumbling into the darkness below. An invisible force yanked Neltharion toward the ground, forcing his left elbow to buckle. He lost his balance, catching himself on his forearm. "You are weak," the whispers said. In defiance of the voices in his head, Neltharion pushed himself back to his feet. His joints trembled. After centuries as the Earth Warder, he had grown accustomed to bearing the weight of the world on his back, but this force took that burden and increased it exponentially. His bones creaked, threatening to snap. Capillaries burst in the whites of his eyes. Every muscle in his body trembled. The stone-scaled cocked his head, watching the black aspect with great interest.
"No one is stronger than Azeroth itself,"
he said softly. Neltharion could only glare at the incarnate.
"Lies," the whispers said. "We are stronger."
The stones revolving around the island accelerated. The force bearing down on the Earth Warder doubled, forcing him to his knees. He gasped, his heartbeat pounding in his skull and on the backs of his eyes, his joints shrieking for relief.
"Call upon our power," said one of the whispers, "or you shall die here in the dark."
The stone scale began to circle him slowly.
"Despite the power your keepers granted you, even you must bow to the elements. Call upon us,"
another whisper said,
"or your friends shall perish in these halls." "I will break you,"
Iridikron said.
"I will trap your kind within these walls forever, if only to prove to you the folly of order and the impotence of your masters." "Do it," another voice said. "Do it or you die here, beaten and broken."
Neltharion would not be broken, nor would he lose to one so inferior as Iridikron. The Earth Warder unleashed all his physical agony in a roar, squeezing his eyes shut. A terrible dark power arose within him, blotting out the light in the room. The shadows imbued him with a terrible, world-breaking strength, and his pain slipped away on a whisper. He opened his eyes and rose to his feet with a snarl, violent light radiating from his scales. It crept over the platform, outlining everything in an eerie, bruised light. Iridikron backed away from Neltharion, his eyes wide.
"I see you now,"
the incarnate said quietly.
"So this is how you bested Razageth. You called upon this dark power to seal her under stone? This is not tight magic. Does your Dragon Queen know you serve another master?" "I serve no one,"
Neltharion said with a growl. As he said those words, a chuckle echoed through the deep places of his mind. In defiance, the Earth Warder punched his talons into the platform, sending the shadows to infest the stone. The floating boulders halted on their paths. With a twitch of his talons, he hurled those boulders into the abyss below. As the stones fell, they crashed into the cavern's walls and sent the last quakes through the keep. The remaining topaz stones burst, sparks and pops of yellow fire in the deep darkness. The weight on Neltharion's back dissipated.
"I should kill you for what you've seen,"
Neltharion said, stalking toward the stone scaled.
"But I dare not leave a corpse for study. You will sleep along with your allies in the Vault of the Incarnates. Alexstrasza can never know what has happened here."
Iridikron snarled as Neltharion drew close, lowering his head to strike.
"Do you think you can hide this from her? Perhaps one day she will find that the greatest threat to our kind was not Primeless or Incarnate, but the very dragon who stood at her right wing."
Neltharion curled his lip.
"I would never betray Alexstrasza." "You already have,"
the stone-scaled snapped. Neltharion leapt on Iridikron, slamming the incarnate into the ground. With his shadowy strength, he reached into the stone-scaled's chest and took hold of the exposed earth energies there. Neltharion wrenched them sideways, almost as if he meant to tear the stone-scaled's heart from his chest. Iridikron roared in pain, thrashing wildly, but the black aspect held him firm. Neltharion lowered his head, his voice no more than a whisper as he said,
"To think you believed yourself my equal."
Iridikron curled his lip, but before the incarnate could respond, Neltharion sent a shock of shadow into the incarnate's very core. Indigo light flared in the stone-scaled's chest. It slicked his scales and coughed from the chasm along his spine. Iridikron shrieked as the shadows slipped into his eyes, his back arching, every inch of his body straining. Then the incarnate went limp. Neltharion kept Iridikron pressed into the floor until the shadows drained from the room. With a shaky breath, the Earth Warder sank to the ground beside the unconscious incarnate, trembling. Harrow's Deep had fallen silent, its quakes broken, its halls unmoving. Still Iridikron's words echoed in the vast chambers of Neltharion's mind. "Does your Dragon Queen know you serve another master?" After so many centuries of fighting, the last flames of war died in darkness and silence. Neltharion would bury the truth of the matter here in Harrow's Deep. He made a silent vow that this would be the last time he would ever give in to the whispers. He would bear the burden of truth alone. Alexstrasza could never know. Yeah, well, we know how that goes. Okay, so that was cool. That was actually like pretty much exactly half of the remaining pages. So the last chapter will be pretty much exactly as long as this one. And that's all we have. We have one chapter left in this book before we move on to another project. But this episode, in the pipe 5x5, thank you, as always, everyone, for watching, for listening, for jamming with me. And I'll see you next time on Lore of Warcraft.